welcome to one of the most historic venues in all of stock car racing, North Wilkesboro Speedway. Tonight, the Sim Racers Club is going to kick off their round of 4 for the 89 Speed Shop Choppin and Droppin 160. I'm Andre Grambush, joined alongside Jordan Harnish, and of course, producer Carlos Acosta, pushing buttons, making it all happen, bringing the action live to your TVs and computers. Jordan, being the first race in the round of 4, we're getting so close to the end of the playoffs and crowning a champion at the end of the season. Why don't you give the fans at home a little bit of a refresher as to how this format works and who the 4 drivers are that are going to be battling it out tonight?
A little bit different than what you see on Sundays with the NASCAR Cup Series. The round of 4 isn't just one race, and it's not one and done. It's a 4-race stretch, 4-race battle between 4 drivers that are going to fight it out for the next 4 weeks, trying to get down to the championship here. Looking at the standings, we have Scott Eckrich after the reset sits with 4,009 points. Tyler Seville is going to be rounding off with 4,003. Greg Evans 4,002. Michael Chrobok 4,002. So reset the points from what you saw a couple weeks ago when they were spread out just a little bit, and even after last week when they got spread out at top. It's all pushed back together. Hit the reset button. Couple bonus points for some clean races the last few weeks, and definitely a few bonus points for Scott Eckrich for winning as many races as he did there up until last week. So winning helps, but it's all nice and close together now, Andre.
Absolutely. The field has been bunched up a lot in terms of points, and you look at these names that are involved in the Final Four: Chrobok, Evans, Seville, Eckrich. I mean, these are drivers that we've spoken nearly endlessly about just because they're always up front, always running well. I feel like this Final Four really is anybody's game. I mean, these are all such talented drivers and so close in pace. It's an unstoppable force meeting 3 other immovable objects, really. It's incredible to see this group of drivers having made it this far and be so close. And we're going to have some interesting tracks coming up, of course, tonight. A short track, which could definitely shake up the points picture going forward. Definitely going to be a fun race. And, you know, let's talk a little bit about the venue here, Jordan. I mean, of course, the real-life NASCAR Cup Series doesn't come here anymore. The last race at this track for the NASCAR Cup Series was held back in 1996. That was won by Jeff Gordon. And the first race was all the way back in 1949. So what do you think it's going to take to win at a track like this, Jordan? A little bit of the old school chrome horn, or maybe something new school?
Man, you mentioned the old school chrome horn. That's what you think come into a short track like this. But this is one of the weirdest short tracks I've ever seen designed, and almost one of the funnest ones to race on. It's got a lot of elevation change. You go downhill into turn 1 and then back uphill, as we're seeing right here, into turn 3 and 4. It's not like any other short track on the schedule. It's one I really wish that I know there's a push to try to get this place back up and running, and I wish they'd do something with it, because I'd love to go down here and try any car here. This is a short track all of its own, and you mentioned it. It's what's it going to take to win here, and I think it's going to be finesse. From racing here before and watching these guys in practice, the track's really greasy, it's really loose, so I think it's going to take a lot of finesse. You're really not going to want to put the bumper to somebody, because you never know what's going to happen once you do that.
Absolutely, and I feel like this is a track that is maybe a bit of a wild card for some of these guys, just in the terms of a lot of the tracks that the Cup Series currently go to. You know, we watch the real-life drivers navigate those tracks every single year, and we've been racing at those tracks on iRacing and in other video games for years, and we kind of have a gist of how those tracks work and what it takes to be successful at those tracks. But with North Wilkesboro, it hasn't made very many appearances in any simulator, short of the old Papyrus games. And of course, the real-life NASCAR series hasn't gone there for years. So for a lot of these drivers, their only experience with it is what little they might have ran here on iRacing, and it really depends on how much they raced. You know, some drivers, considering the classic stock cars are the series that goes here the most for iRacing, maybe some drivers haven't really ran this track that much, so it's going to be a bit of a learning curve. I'm sure these guys have been putting in a lot of practice, but that elevation change you mentioned, that's a big thing. You don't often see that at road court or at short tracks like this. But yeah, so far downhill and then so far uphill, and that's going to affect the way the car handles. I mean, it is going to affect your braking, and you got to be aware of that at all times. Just another thing these drivers are going to have to think about. But it looks like the flagman is waving the checkered flag for practice, and we are getting ready to hop into qualifying, which leads me into the question I got to ask. Who are some of your picks for tonight?
Looking at the practice speed charts, wasn't surprised to see Scott Eckrich close to the top. He was sitting P2. It reset on me, and I believe, I don't remember who was sitting second. But really, I'm expecting to see kind of the normal faces up front. Scott Eckridge, Greg Evans, Johnny Avila, unfortunately got eliminated from the points last week. I expect to see him up front, and maybe even a surprise. Someone like Drew Carroll, who's run consistently all season long. I know he was up there to the start and practice starts as well.
Definitely some solid picks, and again, I think it's going to be hard to determine the outcome of this race. It's really going to come down to flat-out driving. I don't think this is going to wind up being a whole lot of a strategy race. According to our information man, AJ Digby, he told us before the race that if they get one yellow flag, just one caution, they should be good on fuel to the end. So this race is going to come down most likely to just raw driving ability, who can be fastest, who can navigate the traffic. Because, of course, lap traffic will play a part in this event. I mean, we are at a short track, and I would assume you're going to get into some lapped cars eventually, probably sooner rather than later. But on your screen right now, that's the number 27 trying to work his way out of 3 and 4. And you can see how much they arc it out of those corners. They are really diving it down towards that curb, which that's another thing we didn't really mention about this track, Jordan. There is a curb down on the bottom, and these guys are just about straddling it, trying to get every ounce of speed they can out of these cars.
That they definitely are. It's a big debate here. What group is going to be the fastest? The bottom around the curb obviously is the shortest way around the track, but you'll notice as the night goes on that more and more drivers will start to inch their way off that curb, especially in turns 3 and 4, and move up a little bit, trying to get a run off the corner. As we said, you go downhill down turn 1, so the straightest shot off of turn 4 is the fastest way, especially on old tires. So look for these guys later on in the event to start inching up just a little bit off of turn number 4.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what line they choose. You're right. It's kind of up in the air for a lot of these guys. I feel like this very well may be a multi-groove race where the top is a little bit competitive, the bottom's competitive. I don't think they're going to be locked into just one line, but for qualifying at least, I'm seeing a lot of these guys dive down low, and it seems to be the move to make. Tire wear definitely is going to be a factor. Fuel may not be, but I mean, if they're going to go 160 laps without bringing it down pit road, assuming this thing gets one caution or so, that's going to mean whoever's got the best tires at the end of this thing has the best chance at winning. So that kind of leads me to ask, what do you do to save tires at a track like this? I mean, it is a short track. The corners are so wide. I mean, most of the time spent on this track is spent turning. It's got to be pretty harsh on the tires. I mean, what options do you have as a driver to try and take it easy on your equipment?
Man, you don't have many options here. The old surface is so abrasive. It's really hard to pinpoint what you're going to do. I mean, I would look for these guys to probably single file out fairly quickly tonight. I don't imagine too many side-by-side battles early on in this race, especially where they so much on the line for 4 of these drivers. I feel like they're going to single file out pretty quick, and I think it's going to be a freight train for a little while, just trying to save those tires as long as we can. 4 sets of tires total tonight, so 1 set on the car, 3 in the pit, so you got a little bit of a play with 160 laps, but not a whole lot. I'm talking to some of the drivers throughout. They were thinking every 50 or so laps they might be coming down for tires, because tires just going to be that important.
That is interesting. So they're going to want to pit for tires, even though they don't need to pit for fuel, just because you're so much faster on those fresh tires. That's interesting. You know, there's some tracks where that is the move to make. There's some tracks where they want to stay out, but that'll be really fun to see, because even if that's the preferred strategy, like you mentioned, I'd imagine there's going to be a few outliers that maybe just try to stay out and say, all right, we're going to go for the long haul and see what happens. So potentially some mixed strategy in the mix for tonight, and that'll be fun to watch. Currently at the top of the board for qualifying, Tyler Seville is on the pole position with an 18.399, followed shortly by the number 29 machine, Will Warstler. He ran an 18.423. Right behind him, Greg Evans. Johnny Avila, that was one of your picks, almost the first name that popped into your mind there when I was asking about picks there. He's in P4, so not bad at all, 18.481. So we got 3 drivers in the 18.4 bracket, which is pretty impressive to have them that close here to short track. Then Scott Eckridge currently sitting P5 with an 18.5, and a lot of drivers in that 0.5 bracket, including behind Eckridge, Woody Mahan, Brian Yaczik, Troy Haight, Michael Chrobok. He is one of the final 4. He's all the way back in 9th with an 18.6. He's the first one in that 0.6 bracket. AJ Digby behind him and is going to round out your top 10 so far in qualifying. A little bit further back, Tim Knott, Richard Fletcher, Drew Carroll, John Eckert, Kevin Stone, Adam Jersky, and Mark Myers has not posted a time yet. He is the only driver to not do so. But so far, 16 cars have posted a time, and these times are close. That's one thing I love about this fixed setup league is that everybody's got the same car, everybody's got the same opportunity. It's all about what they can do with it. And I think we may be having some technical difficulties with Jordan, but in the meantime, looks like qualifying is wrapping up shortly. The 69 Adam Dursky, he's still on track. He's making some practice laps, just trying to get every little bit of practice he can out of this session. Can't blame a guy, especially at a track like North Wilkesboro. Practice makes perfect indeed. So he's going to get every lap in he can, as well as a few of these other drivers, I'm sure. But yeah, it's going to be quite the show to watch. Fixed setup, short track racing, some of the best racing on the service, and of course, very talented field of drivers here for the Sim Racers Club. And 4 drivers in particular, they're going to be battling it out with everything they have, trying to get ahead in the points, so that in a few weeks, it's them being crowned champion. But of course, not going to come easy. Everybody's going to be giving it their all. And we have about 3 minutes left in qualifying. And just watching the cars go around this track, I find it really amusing. It's just, you know, this is a historic venue, really old track. And the facilities around the track, I mean, they scream retro. You look at the grandstands, they're practically just wooden bleachers in the middle of a field. Even the commentator's booth up there is kind of retro looking, of course. The Armco barriers with the red and white. I believe they were painted those colors in sponsorship with Winston, I believe, for the Cup Series back in the day, which is why they are those colors. A lot of different safer barriers and Armco barriers are painted the way they are in correlation to a sponsor, even if it's not directly mentioned, such as Las Vegas. Las Vegas in real life, currently, they have the yellow barriers. That's for Pennzoil. I believe Kentucky was for Quaker State. They had the green barriers, but yeah, the facilities around this track, very retro looking. If any of you out there are as nostalgic as I am, possibly too much so, this race is going to be an absolute treat just for the scenery around the track and, of course, the venue itself. Just checking in here because we do seem to be having some technical difficulties. You got a copy, Jordan?
Hey, I'm back. We're good.
All right. Well, Jordan, we got a couple minutes of qualifying left. I think the grid is pretty much set. Nobody's going to be altering their times. And, you know, Jordan, the start of this race, it's going to be chaotic. It's going to be wild because you have the entire field bunched up. Everybody's going to be jockeying for position. Let's say it's you in that car, and let's say it's you in the final 4. What do you do to try to better your chances at being there at the end and making sure you maximize points? Are you going to try to get out front and try to take every position you can? Or are you going to be more focused on just keeping the car clean on these restarts until things start to kind of file out and get a little bit calm?
I'm going to do just what Tyler Seville did. He was mid-pack in the practice charts come out here. He laid down one of the best laps we've seen all day long with an 18.399. I'm going to put this thing on the pole. I'm going to run as fast as I possibly can. Get out as far as I can and hope everything behind me is just chaos. I mean, he's done exactly what he can do. He's done everything he needs to do. Now he just needs to go out there and put the thing on cruise control, ride around in the front of the pack, and whatever happens behind him really isn't his problem at this point.
Exactly. You can't get caught up in other people's mistakes if there's no other people around you. And if you start up front, that just completely negates a lot of the difficulties that you might have trying to navigate the pack and work your way through the field. But, you know, some of these guys, not so lucky. Again, I'm looking all the way back at position number 9. That's Michael Chrobok. That is a Final 4 driver, and he's starting pretty much dead center of the field. So he's got a lot of cars behind him, a lot of cars in front. He's going to be boxed in on this initial start. What do you do if you're him?
Man, if you're Michael, you're holding on for dear life. You're hoping everyone around you's on their A game tonight. He's, like you said, starting 9th, dead center of the Hornet's nest. And for a Final 4 driver, that's not where you want to be. But if you think back to all the races that we've had this season, that's about where Michael's been qualifying. He qualifies mid to the front of the mid pack, right about 9th place all season long. And you don't really talk to him about him too much. Like you hear his name every now and again running in the top 10, and then all of a sudden at the end of the race, kind of like Kevin Harvick, where'd he come from? He's now top 5. And that's how he's gotten here all season long. No wins for the 72 car. in the Cup Series, but multiple top 5 finishes is what's got him here.
Yeah, you don't always have to qualify well because in terms of motorsports, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And I think Chrobok is a prime example of that. And, the fact that he, like you said, tends to not qualify super well, but he's here in the Final Four, that shows that he knows how to navigate this pack. He knows that he can work his way through this field, and he feels confident doing it. So that'll be fun to watch. But we do have our official starting grid. We'll go ahead and run through that. I'll take 1 through 10, hand it off to you, Jordan. Tyler Seville on the pole for Will Warstler Racing, alongside the boss man, Will Warstler, in that number 29. Greg Evans and Johnny Avila making up row 2, and row 3 is going to be Scott Eckrich and Woody Mahan. Behind them, you got Brian Yaczik and Troy Haight. Rounding out the top 10 is going to be Michael Chrobok and AJ Digby.
Tim Knott and Richard Fletcher will start 11th and 12th. After them, it will be Drew Carroll and John Eckert. Kevin Stone and Adam Jersky will be 15th and 16th. And rounding out the field, 17-car field tonight, Mark Myers in the 04 car.
That is your official starting grid, so the fans at home know exactly where your favorite driver is going to be rolling off tonight. And they are rolling. The pace car has fired that thing up. The field's doing their best to get caught up, and very shortly we are going to be under green for some short track Final Four action here at North Wilkesboro, climbing up the uphill backstretch, which you mentioned. Again, that's going to be really fun to see how these guys navigate the elevation changes and how it kind of affects their driving style and what they got to do. But lights are off on the pace car, so I do believe we're going to be going green this time. Nope, we're going to go around one more time, and then we will be underway. But, if they do have to come down pit road, that's going to be pretty interesting as well. I mean, you said yourself, Jordan, some of these guys are going to be pitting for tires just for that additional speed, even though they don't need to pit necessarily. And this is a pretty, I don't want to say basic, but a very interesting pit road entry, because the track, it's an older track, a little bit outdated in some ways, and this pit road entry is right out of turn 4. I mean, there's almost no runoff. You go from the track to the pits, as the pace car is about to do. That'll be really fun to watch, because I'd imagine that poses a challenge. But here we go. Green flag is in the flagman's hand, and out they go. The number 11 not getting the jump that he wanted to get. Will Warstler on the outside is going to have the advantage going into the corner, with the number 11 staying side by side. Greg Evans in that number 2 right behind, trying to push the number 11. And, of course, Scott Eckrich in that number 70 machine also in tow. Johnny Avila boxed in, nowhere to go. Cars in front, cars behind. He's riding in 4th right now. And finally, the number 11, Tyler Seville, is clear of any competition. He is safely in the lead. And Will Warstler goes side by side with Greg Evans.
Side by side, they go down to 3 and 4. 2 completely different corners here, turns 3 and 4 and turns 1 and 2. Turns 1 and 2, you see these guys up off the bottom just a little bit, trying to arc it in. And coming through turn 2, there's a little bit of a jet out with the grass that a lot of these guys, you'll notice later on in the runs, especially, they're going to start clipping it, trying to get as much as they can coming off these corners. Whereas 3 and 4 is a lot more straightforward. They don't have the grass coming off at turn 2. Obviously, it's the pit road entry that Andre just mentioned that you got to worry about. So 2 completely different corners, 2 completely different ways to navigate it. Watching how these guys are going to work through it is going to be interesting.
And look at this. We got a move for the lead early on. Greg Evans in that number 2. He just briefly put his bumper to the back of the number 11. Didn't push him, didn't get him loose, just let him know he was there. Then he got the run into the corner. Right there, he actually got a little bit tight, had to check up. That gave the advantage back to the number 11. He's going to stay at the quarter panel, though. Didn't let the 11 get clear. So the battle continues out of turn 4, past pit road to the stripe. The 11 really fighting back on that high line, and that is good to see. That tells me that all night tonight, this track is going to be prime for battling. These guys can use their car in just about any way they want. They can take it up high, they can take it down low, and it seems like both lanes are doing phenomenal. But a huge shot from Eckrich is going to push the number 2 just a little bit ahead. He's got the advantage now, but Seville not letting it go that easy. He's going to try to get back to the door with a huge run out of the corner. He may get clear into the corner, but not quite, as Evans still battling back on the bottom. And I think right now, as crazy as it sounds, Jordan, I think the deciding factor in this battle for the lead may be the number 70, because he is player 3. He's entered the game, and if he makes a move, that doesn't leave these other guys much of an option. Or if he pushes somebody out the lead like he almost did with the number 2, that could decide this battle.
That it definitely could. And don't look now. There's a pink flash behind your screen. The 63 of Johnny Avila. He's going to put his name in this battle as well. Is he's trying to run the much higher groove than everyone else through turns 1 and 2, and it seems to be really working for him there for a few laps.
Yeah, it seems like the high line is working for these guys, but like you said, it seemed to only work for a few laps. Maybe these guys are overheating their tires up there. They get a little bit warm, lose a little bit of grip, and then have to move back to the bottom for a while. That's something that may be happening as Woody Mahan is down on the bottom. Looks like he's going to try to make a move again. That's another driver who he's not in the final 4 in points, but he is a driver who's really found a burst of speed, a burst of momentum towards the tail end of the season, getting some better finishes than he was getting early on, and definitely wants to finish the season out with some momentum. So good to see that 84 up front, battling it out with the likes of Johnny Avila there in the 63. We do have a little bit of a technical difficulty with our regular overlay, so in the meantime, we have Sim Racing apps. We'll work on getting that fixed for you guys at home as soon as we can, but in the meantime, you can still see where everybody's running. And man, oh man, this is short track battling, Jordan. This is absolutely nail-biting, and we're only 12 laps in. You gotta love it.
Absolutely. This is what racing's all about. Nose to tail, these guys all throw a blanket over the top 5, and they're all right there. And it really didn't surprise me too much to see Greg Evans want to lead some of these laps. I mean, he's behind in points, behind Scott Eckert just a little bit, and obviously you see the 11 starting on pole. He obviously led a lap. So you got to do everything you can to keep your competition within earshot. And 3 of the top 4 in points are right there, 1, 2, 3, with Johnny Avila right hot on their heels.
Absolutely. Nobody's getting away from anybody, and that's what I'm noticing. You know, we're 14 laps, almost 15 laps into this race, and there's not much separation. It's hard to tell who has the better car, who is, you know, saving their tires more than the next guy, because they're just right there in the pace. And like you said, it's not surprising that Greg Evans wanted to get out there and lead some laps. And, you know, to do it, it didn't come easy. He had to really fight the number 11 for that position. When he got around him, that allowed Eckert as well to kind of follow in his tire tracks, putting Seville all the way back down to 3rd, but he's still right there, right in the battle. Chrobok, where he started, was P9, and he's currently running P9. He hasn't really gained anything yet, but he is right on the bumper of Troy Haight back there, and Brian Yaczik not far ahead of them. So he's a little bit further back as far as position, but when it comes to timing and scoring, in reality, he's not that far back from the rest of these playoff contenders. So long race tonight. It's going to be a lot of time for him to try to make up some positions, see what he can do here at this track. And it's going to be an absolute rally for Chrobok. I mean, in 9th, he's going to have to pass a lot of cars, but definitely, again, I think he's capable of it. On your screen right there, that's the number 69, Adam Jersky, with the Adam Jersky's Beef Cheesecake. I probably got that wrong. The sponsor. No, I did get it right. Okay. He is in a heated battle right now. That 17. I think he might have put the bumper to him there, Jordan.
Yeah, it looks like he definitely did put the bumper to the 17. The 17 rallies back on the outside. Kind of surprising to see Jersky running so far back. I mean, he really bad qualifying run. We saw him make a bunch of extra laps after his qualifying run, so obviously he wasn't too happy with the car through that qualifying run. It still doesn't seem to be all that happy with it. We see him just kind of running right now in P, I believe, 13, so a little bit up from where he started. But this was one of the tracks, if I remember back last year when we came into the chase, Adam was one of the drivers that was kind of a dark horse going into the Final Four, and this is one of the tracks he rallied at and was able to gain some fairly valuable points. So to see him struggling tonight is kind of surprising.
Yeah, you know, every little thing, every little change could throw a driver off, even at a track they like. It could be something as simple as track temperature, or it could just be that the rest of the field, knowing how crucial this race is, really put a lot of time in, really practiced. I know I've been in that situation. You know, sometimes you're good at a track and you get complacent. You think, well, I'm going to do good here regardless. But that just tells the competition that they need to practice more if you're down here dominating and doing really well. So they get better. And if you take it a little bit easy on the practice and you don't really improve yourself too much, you can find yourself slowly slipping back in the running order. But Adam Jersky, he's one of those drivers that where he starts a race and where he runs early on isn't always where he's going to finish the race. I've noticed that a lot, where be it through strategy or just through speed alone, he tends to gain position steadily throughout a race. So I'm going to keep an eye on him. We're going to see what he can do. Like you said, He has done really well at this track before, so I would expect him to make a bit of a comeback later on. We're riding on board with your race leader, the number... I apologize. We are riding along with Greg Evans, who's currently running second. He fell behind to that number 70, looking back towards Tyler Seville. And again, it's just a freight train of cars. All of these drivers just within just feet of each other, in and out of these corners, waiting for the next guy to make a mistake. I mean, you got to think that's kind of the mindset here, Jordan. When you're this close in speed, this close on track, really what it comes down to is hoping that the guy in front of you overshoots the corner, gets on the throttle a little bit too soon, and opens that door for you to get around.
Yeah, you mentioned that Greg Evans fell back to P2, and that I was watching that battle as we were talking about the 69 of Adam Jersky, and that's exactly what happened. It looked like Greg overshot turn 3 and 4 just a little bit, which opened the door for the 70, and instead of really fighting him, it took him about a lap or so to get by, but Scott Eckert, Greg just really let him go by the next time they got into turns 3 and 4 instead of fighting him and slid down in front of the 11, trying to minimize that damage as much as possible. Because like you mentioned earlier, if you fight him on the outside for too long, we're almost 30 laps into a run here, tires are going to start getting a little bit warm, and the more you run the outside, the more you're going to heat up the outside tires, and instead of falling back in a second, letting things cool off, you could end up 5th or 6th, and that's not what a championship contender needs to do right now.
Yeah, you got to take care of your tires. I mean, even if you do come down every 50 laps, like you mentioned, was an option for some of these guys, you still want to have good tires towards the end of that run, because even by lap 15, lap 20, you're going to start feeling that fall off. So you run that high line a little bit too much, and you might just be hindering yourself later on when everybody else has slightly better tires. But again, it's all going to come down to what lines these guys run, how they can take care of their equipment, and even something as dynamic as track temp. I'm noticing where you got a lot of cloud cover right now that was not there when this race started, and that's another thing that can completely change the line that you want to run and the handling of your car. Just a few degrees in variance can make it feel like you're on a completely different surface. And I'll tell you what, this cloud cover is thick right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. It was pure sunshine when we threw the green flag, and now it's almost looks like a rain cloud is over the top of the track. Unfortunately, Irish doesn't have that feature in quite yet. I think I read that it was coming, which would definitely throw a monkey wrench into everyone's plans if rain was introduced into the sim. But no rain coming tonight. We're going to stay clean and green the rest of the way weather-wise. But yeah, that cloud up there right now is extremely dark.
And for some of these guys, that may be a bit of a blessing, especially for Scott Eckert. I mean, it seems like as soon as that cloud cover came in, that's when Eckert really took off. But we have a yellow flag on the circuit here on lap 33. Looks to be an incident in turn 4. Can't quite identify who that was just yet. Tim Knott, I'm hearing, may have been the driver involved, as well as Troy Hayton at number 28 machine. We're going to take a look at the replay here on our 3-wide TV replay. So there's the number 28. He's working his way into 3. 27 just nudges that quarter panel a little bit, gets him sideways, and ooh, man, that was a lot of close calls right there. I got to think some of those cars may have got some damage because they really bottled up behind him, trying to avoid him. On the bumper cam of Troy Haight, number 27 dives it in down low, and it's just a love tap, just enough to get him around. Man, oh man, you don't get much closer than that, Jordan.
No, it doesn't. Close call for championship contender 72 Michael Chrobok, just barely missing that as Drew Carroll's going to go to the back of the pack for the contact made, and look at that, just can't get any closer, and it looks like the 41 of Tim Knott might have smacked the outside wall as the one driver that kind of got squeezed in. Looks like we got pit stops going down right now, 34 laps in, and it looked like all the lead lap drivers came down.
I can't say that surprises me. It looks like we do have one holdout, number 45, Eckert. He's going to stay on the track for now. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me, Jordan. Tires are going to be important here, and we were 33 laps into the run at the time of caution. So with all those laps on those tires, if you stayed out, that kind of just makes you a sitting duck, and that is the last position that any of these final 4 drivers really want to be in. They want to have their car in top shape at all times. I think really, to get these guys to not pit, we would have had to have a caution on like lap 5 or 6, to the point where tires hadn't been really run at all. It's just the smart call, I think. And I am curious to see what these guys do in terms of fuel, though, because, again, they can make it to the end. But how much fuel is in the car also affects the handling. You know, some guys like a car that's a little bit lighter, some guys like a car that's a little bit heavier, and some of these guys may be topping off on fuel just for that extra weight in the rear end.
Yeah, absolutely. If it was me, I'd be going to put that fuel in that thing just to keep that balance of the car. The way I remember it from the beginning of the race, it looks like we're doubling the field up 1 to green here. John Eckert stayed out. That could be a little bit interesting here as we come down and take the green.
Yeah, this is going to be something. Those old tires, I'd have to imagine they are really a lot slower than they were, but here we go. Pace car is off the track. 45 gets on the throttle, gets a really good start for those older tires. He did not spin them at all. And down into turn 1, the number 70 is going to pass him easily on the high side. That is the power of fresher tires, ladies and gentlemen, as the 45 is going to fall back. Johnny Avila 3 wide with the 45. He goes down on the curb, and nearly an incident with the number 29. That was some short-lived glory for the 45, but luckily everybody was able to work their way through. Things have kind of settled down as the number 70 takes the lead, a good 3 car lengths ahead of Greg Evans. Tyler Seville back in 3rd, and we do have a bit of a battle for 4th. Woody Mahan and Johnny Avila have gone side by side a couple times through the corner. Johnny Avila now going to the high line all the way out to the wall, trying to see if he can drive down the banking and get a huge run down the straightaway, which he does. Now, that's an interesting line that he just pulled right there. I'm not sure if he's going to do it again, because if he got a car underneath you, it's kind of risky, but man, it seemed like going high, which, yeah, he's doing it again. Johnny Avila to the wall, and he's going to turn sharp left and drive it down the banking. Look at this massive run that he gets from that. He's actually going to get alongside the 84. That is an interesting line, and Johnny Avila, that's not the first time he's ran an unconventional line that kind of surprised me. I think it maybe was New Hampshire that Avila was running a completely different line than the rest of the field, and it was working really well. So a little bit of creativity behind the wheel of that 63.
Yeah, you mentioned Johnny's not one that's definitely not afraid to make a groove out of something that's not even there. I think you mentioned back to New Hampshire. If I remember correctly, he was running like the apron at New Hampshire, which is the flattest part of the racetrack, and he was able to get some grip down there, which was baffling to even his competitors. And some of them even tried it and said they didn't know how he was doing it. So Johnny is definitely one that's he might run a very unconventional line, but he makes it work every time he does it.
Absolutely. A little bit of creativity never hurt anybody. And there he goes again, out to the wall and then down the banking. Gets a little bit of a run there, just not quite able to make the pass. I think the passes are going to get a little bit easier once the tires start to wear. It's just right now, everybody's car, they got 4 fresh feel goods, and they're able to kind of play the defense wherever they want to play it and however they want to play it, making overtakes a little bit difficult. But once these cars start sliding around a little bit more, if Johnny Avila can keep this pace up, I think you're going to see him make a couple overtakes here as he continues to run that line right behind the 84. Of course, behind him, we've got Brian Yaczik, the number 55. He's inching his way closer to this lead pack, kind of bringing Will Warstler in tow as well. He's back there in 7th. And right here, we got another battle. AJ Digby making the pass on the 41, Tim Knott. These guys are going to stay bumper to bumper through the corner. That's the thing about short tracks, Jordan. You can make the pass, but you never really get too far away, at least immediately. I mean, you make the pass on somebody, and they're right there on your bumper, and crossovers and slide jobs happen on a regular basis at a track like this. So definitely makes it exciting.
That it does. It kind of makes you think twice, too, if you want to put the bumper to somebody, because like you mentioned, you get by them, and then they're still right there. So if you put the bumper to them, and they don't necessarily enjoy the fact you just gave them the bumper, they might be able to get right back to you, and you could find yourself sitting backwards against the outside wall. That's not much fun.
Speaking of bumper, look at these two drivers. Woody Mahan getting a little impatient with the 63, who did finally make the overtake, but it looked like he put the bumper to him just slightly last lap. Now he's going to ride behind him. Every time Avila takes that high line, he's able to dive it down low and get the run into the corner. And then Avila gets the speed out. So it's kind of a situation where these guys are fast at different sections of the track. There he goes again, down to the bottom alongside the 63. But then Avila is gone, and these two lines seem to be cooperating pretty well, but I feel like there's some give and take going on here. I mean, as much as Avila's driving down the track, I feel like if the 84 wanted to get a little bit more aggressive, he definitely could play some defense there. He's being nice right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All it takes is for the 84 to move up just about a half a groove, and it's going to take away a lot of that run that the Vito's getting on the outside, and really make them have to work hard on staying off each other, or thinking twice about what line they're going to start running after that.
And of course, give and take is kind of what your race is built on. I mean, throughout the course of a race, everybody's going to remember how you raced them and what you did when you were around them, and they're going to race you accordingly. And in a situation like that, you know, if a guy wants to run a line that maybe cuts into yours, or, you know, you want to run a line that maybe cuts into theirs, if you're both playing nice and you're both letting each other run your respective lines and there's no aggression there, then they're going to remember that later on and maybe play nice at that point too when it matters. So don't want to make any rivals, and of course none of these guys have. It's been a very phenomenally clean race. A little bit of push and shove here and there, but again, just extremely minor pushes and minor taps. But I'm curious to see how that changes as the race progresses, because, you know, again, we're still early into this event. Lap 54 out of 160 for the 89 Speed Shop Choppin and Droppin 160. Laps wind down, maybe the aggression levels go up.
Yeah, they absolutely could, and we see right now the 70 of Scott Eckert starting to stretch his lead out just a little bit over the 2 of Greg Evans, but the 11 of Tyler Seville is keeping it right on his back bumper. So you're not missing too much there. And we look back down through the field, trying to chase down your Final Four championship competitor, Michael Chrobok, currently running P8. So he's starting to work his way up through the field just a little bit. And right behind him, we were talking about him earlier, Adam Jersky in the 69. He's worked his way all the way up to 9th after that pit stop.
Yeah, I think he might have been a slight benefactor of that incident. He definitely passed a couple cars there, and he did get a really good pit stop. I think he did get one guy on pit road. So he's been working his way forward, and I said it before, and I'll say it again. He's just one of those drivers that, be it through strategy or be it through raw speed, he'll work his way up through the field, and you can just about count on it. So he's definitely making things interesting for the fans. Riding on board with Will Warstler, he's right behind the number 55. And again, so many drivers running different lines. Will Warstler adopting the Avila line almost. He's way up high on entry, down low on exit. The 55 taking a more conventional arc through the corner here. He's going to get down to the curb, right up on the bumper of the 55. And again, it's always impressive to me, the reaction times. I mean, when you're at a short track, you're constantly going into the next braking zone, almost perpetually going into a braking zone. And when the car in front of you brakes, you have just a split second to react to that and make sure that everything stays clean. And these guys have just done a fantastic job of it, as you can see riding on board. It gives you a bit of a new perspective on it. I know sometimes the television cameras make it look easy, but when this is what the drivers are looking at and they got to predict when the car in front of them is going to mash those brakes, things get a little bit different. And mash the brakes they are, Jordan. They are really getting onto the brakes at this track, which is something that I expected them to use the brakes. I'm just surprised at how hard they're hitting them. And so I got to wonder, do the brake rotors start to overheat? Does the handling of the car start to change? Is that something these guys got to pay attention to?
I know the brake rotors do heat up in iRacing. I don't know if it actually changes the handle of the car. I don't know if they've got it to the point where it does that yet, but I do know eventually here we might, the more brake that gets used, the more we'll be able to see some brake rotors start to glow a little bit red, especially the guys that are having a little bit of an ill-handling car. They might be using more and more front brake to try to turn the car, and that's where you're going to start seeing the brake rotors start glowing. A little bit of orange and then a little bit of red the hotter they get. It'd be really interesting to find out if they actually did heat the tires up and make the car handle worse. It'd be kind of a fun feature if they have that implemented, if they don't already.
Absolutely, and even if they don't have it where it affects the handling, I would imagine brake fade is still a thing on the simulator, depending on the temperatures, which is another thing you got to pay attention to. I mean, if your brakes start to fade, you go into the corner and you get on your, let's say, usual 70% brake input, and it just doesn't slow down as much as you expect. That could be catastrophic, and the damage to these cars as well. That's another thing. This track does not have safer barriers, which obviously safety isn't really a concern when you're sim racing unless you break your hand on your force feedback, but to the car, these concrete barriers do hit a little bit harder. They do give your car a little bit more damage. So any mistake that you might make is more severely punished than at certain other tracks.
Yeah, you mentioned, even though, like you said, safety is really not a concern when you're on the simulator, it definitely is a big difference to hit the concrete here than it is to hit a safer barrier at, say, a track like Martinsville or something like that. You definitely notice the car reacts a lot different when you hit the concrete, and like you said, it does do a lot more damage. it just makes you think twice about some of the moves you're going to make.
Absolutely, and luckily for a short track, this track is pretty wide, so they do have kind of the opportunity to catch their car if front end washes out or if they overshoot the corner. It's not like Bristol or Martinsville where it's real narrow and you don't have much room to work with. It's a very wide track, which, beyond just giving them more opportunity to save the car and more opportunity to try to, avoid any damage, it also really promotes a great racing product like we've seen tonight. I mean, how often have we seen these guys go side by side 2 and 3 wide and still have room to spare? I mean, this track is just incredibly wide, and it has put on one heck of a show tonight.
That it definitely has. Got to thinking about something, Andre, and I'm going to get a little bit off topic here, but I got to mention it before I forget. We can all get yelled at because we forgot to mention it. Happy birthday to Will Warstler in the 29 car. Showed up tonight on his birthday to run at one of the most fun tracks there is on the service. So happy birthday to Will.
Absolutely. I didn't know it was his birthday today, but happy birthday, boss man Will Warstler. Hopefully you can get a performance worthy of the occasion. And I'm hearing in my ear that it's also going to be our producer Carlos's birthday on Monday. So happy birthday to you, Carlos. And, a lot of birthdays. My sister's birthday was last week. Actually, it was a couple days ago. So yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting. But right now on your screen, we got a 3-car battle spearheaded by Greg Evans in the number 2 and Tyler Seville behind him. You got a lap car between them. So we finally started to get into some lap traffic here, Jordan. How does this change the dynamic of the race?
This could start backing the 70 car up a little bit. Lap traffic here, it's one of the harder things to work through just because there's plenty of racing room to be had, but there's really no place to go when it comes to being a lap car. You don't want to get too far out of line because then you're going to start getting the car unhappy, and you don't want to start overthinking things as the leaders come up on you. You really want to make the leaders kind of just do their own thing to get by you, and that's what we're seeing. A lot of the lap cars kind of running their groove and making the leaders say, hey, I'll figure out my way around you, just stay put.
Yeah, sometimes I think that's what the leaders prefer. I mean, it's sometimes better to have the lap car just run their line and be consistent about it, even if they're in your line and the line that you want to run. As long as they're consistent and you know how to work around them, that's a good thing. You'd rather have that than a lap car trying to swerve and switch lanes to try to get out of your way, but you don't really know where they're going or what they're doing, because obviously communication is never going to be perfect in stock car racing. So the best kind of communication is to just run your line consistently, and then they know for sure what they got to do to get around you. You know what they're going to do, and everybody can kind of get out of the situation no worse for wear. But everybody so far that's gone a lap down has been incredibly respectful, doing a very good job. And I think we're at the point in the season, I've always said, it's the lap car's job to bring home the best finish they can get. So, they're in the race. It's their responsibility to compete, and they don't owe anybody anything. They don't have to let anybody go. But we are at a point in the season. We've got the final 4 drivers in points, and this is when you start to see a lot of the lap cars start to roll over a little bit more and be a little bit more passive to the situation, because I don't think anybody wants to be that guy that gets into a championship contender and ends their hopes.
No, you definitely don't. Not with the prizes we have on the line this season. I believe it's another very hefty prize that's going to be already hit the end of the season. Like you said, you don't want to be the lap car that costs someone the chance at one of those prizes, and there's multiple prizes to be had. I mean, just because you're lapped down doesn't mean you're not racing for something. You could be a driver like Kevin Stone, who we see just went a lap down, or John Eckert, or even Tim Knott, who maybe are running a lap down. You see them a lap down more often than not, but they're here every week. And if you look at the incident totals, they're at usually the bottom of the barrel. Very little incidents with these drivers. They're always very clean. And that's something for this league, and we have a raffle at the end of the season for a cool prize, which I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what it is this season, but the cleanest driver of the year does get a prize as well. So just because you might be a lap down doesn't mean you're not racing for something.
Yeah, there's always something to go for, be it your points position or some of the other accolades that may be offered by the league and the administration. So everybody is out here for a purpose, and I mean, even if they're not racing for any of those things, they're still racing for bragging rights, still racing for pride, and nobody's going to come out here just to turn laps. They all want to do as good as they possibly can, and I think that's the kind of mindset that just makes this league so great and what puts on such good racing. But this battle right here has not ended. I mean, these two drivers, Woody Mahan Johnny Avila, these guys have been pretty much bumper to bumper with each other since the drop of the green on this last restart, and neither one's escaped. Johnny Avila did make the overtake. He finally made the pass. It took him a long time. Once he made that pass, he didn't really drive away. He's only staying about a car length ahead as they run down the lap car of Tim Knott. And still, Woody Mahan running that low line, and it's just getting him down to the quarter panel. That time he got a good run out of the corner. Didn't expect to see that. They're going to be even closer into 3 and 4. And I got to wonder if maybe that 63 tires are starting to get a little hot right now, so he's got to move down to the bottom, because Woody Mahan on that low line closed the gap massively, and here he goes again. It seems like he's got so much entry speed compared to that 63. I definitely see why these guys are not escaping one another, but the lap car does separate them just a little bit. Gives Johnny Avila a moment to breathe, which is hard to come across at a track that's so short.
Yeah, it definitely is. You're going to take every moment you possibly can and savor it, because as you look here, the 84, Woody Mahan starting to close back in on that 63 car. And you mentioned what a great battle these guys have had. Woody Mahan, we touched on it earlier, had one of the roughest seasons up until about a couple weeks ago, and then before us last week. Coming home the victor at Talladega really kind of propelled him in the direction that he wants to go for next season. We can see it even here tonight, running in 5th right now, trying to chase down that 63 car. He's not giving up whatsoever, and you can see the fight back in the 84 car that it wasn't there at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, a lot of fight in that car, and a lot of confidence too. I mean, you know, that 84, racing and motorsports in general, it's all about momentum, and it's all about your mindset. You got to have some confidence. You got to feel like you have a chance when you show up at the track, because if you don't, well, you're beating yourself before you ever even climb in the car. So I think these good performances that Mahan has had over the last few weeks has definitely boosted his confidence, and it's done wonders for his ability behind the wheel. I mean, we always knew that he had ability. It's just, you know, you get in a rut, you get in your own head, you start telling yourself, man, I don't know, and you start to kind of fall behind. But it's been an incredible late season rally for the 84, and he's shown a lot of talent behind that wheel. Out front right now, Eckrich is still leading the way, something to the tune of about 2.4 seconds over Greg Evans. Tyler Seville is running the third, 4.5 back from the leader. So we're finally starting to see some separation between the leaders. That's about the only separation of the field, because everywhere else, these guys are pretty much bumper to bumper, which is really crazy to me. Usually, you know, when it comes down to these situations where you got 4 drivers competing for the points, they're really, really close in pace because they put in so much practice, so much time. But a little bit of separation so far, and that could come down to lap traffic. That could just be, you know, how well they're able to manage their tires. Because again, this is not your normal track. This is a track where conservation is rewarded massively, and we do have a caution on the track, lap 92. I'm hearing that it may be AJ Digby involved out of turn 4. He's going to be parked up on the high line. A few drivers just barely going to squeak on by. Take a look at the replay here, Jordan. Let's find out what happened to Digby, the only verified driver on Twitter for the league. Just a little bit of contact with the leader in the number 70 machine, so that's interesting. I gotta wonder if the leader maybe got a little bit impatient with the lap traffic, saying, hey, you know, let me through here.
Yeah, that was definitely all. It looks like the 14 took a wider arc than I think the 70 car was expecting, and then the 70 thought that the 14 was going to give him the bottom, and then the 14 came down and just kind of took the groove away from the 70, and at that point, that really didn't have any much of a choice. He had to kind of fill the groove, or no matter really what he's going to do, he's going to make contact. So around went the 14, unfortunately, in that situation.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, the closing rate and being so close to one another at all times. You just have a split second to react, and in that situation, Scott Eckrich, like you said, I think contact was just about inevitable there. There was really not much changing that. So the 14 unfortunately goes around, but not much damage. I think the only damage he really got might have been on the front end from when he gassed it up to try to get out of the way. He put the nose to the wall a little bit, which good reaction time by Digby as well. I mean, he saw those cars coming up behind, and he got right up against the wall as quickly as he could. So absolute team player there to kind of put yourself at risk and damage your car just to get out of other people's way is pretty awesome to see. I mean, sometimes, you know, these drivers, especially when they get involved in an incident, Not these drivers in particular, I'm just talking about motorsports. But you get involved in an incident, and you're not really thinking about the other guys. You're not thinking, well, I want them to have a good race, and I don't want to get in their way. You're thinking, man, I just wrecked, my race is shot. But, ooh, what is going on here?
Race control has made the decision that they're going to put both drivers to the rear, the 14 and the 70. They said the 14 definitely cut across the nose of the 70, but race control felt the 70 obviously had something involved with that as well. So both drivers going to the back, so that's a shake-up big time. Your leader, Scott Eckrich, number 70, to the rear.
That is a huge shakeup, and while I would hate to be an admin that has to make that kind of decision, I have to agree with that. I think, you know, in a lot of different forms of racing, they always have what they call spin or spinny, and at that point, it doesn't really matter whose fault it was. If you were involved, you go to the back, and I think that's a good way of removing any bias, a good way of removing any judgment from the situation. It's cut, dry, and simple. If you were in the wreck, regardless of fault, you're going to the back. And unfortunately, the number 70, the former race leader, is going to be sent to the back. Luckily for him, it is a bit of a thin field tonight. We've got 17 cars on the grid. He's only going back to, it looks like 11th, because he would be tail end of the lead lap. So not as many cars to pass as maybe other races in the season, if that were to happen. So we'll see what he can do. But Greg Evans is going to lead them back to the green for lap 97 and immediately gets clear. That's probably the best restart we've seen all night. It seems like in restarts past, the leaders stayed side by side with the outside of row 2, but not Greg Evans. That was a huge jump, leaving Tyler Seville in second, Johnny Avila in third, and Will Warstler battling for his life back here among other drivers, trying to jockey for position. Woody Mahan ahead of the number 55, just barely there. Avila diving up to the outside to try to run his line. Man, cars are everywhere. This is a scramble, Jordan.
Absolutely it is, and that's that late race caution. Just about 60 laps to go for these guys. They've all realized it's go time. The 70 Scott Eckrich having sent to the rear, opened the door wide open for Greg Evans to jump out to a commanding lead now, and it's going to be interesting to see if how quickly the 70 can get back up through the field. And he's got a hornet's nest to try to get up through. As you can see right here, he's just getting by the 28 of Troy Hayden. Now he's going to get by the 27, the 72, the 69. All drivers that aren't just going to lay over and let him go.
Absolutely, and that incident, you know, one man's trash is another man's treasure, but Eckrich's misfortune may have been a bit of a saving grace for Chrobok, who did get around him. And again, all of these final four contenders want to be ahead of one another, but there goes Eckrich back around the outside of Chrobok, so he's going to take that position back. He's on the hunt through the field, and as the number 70 tries to fight his way back up through the field, the way that car bounced, I couldn't quite tell, but it looked like he might have had some contact on the left-hand side. I don't know. Car kind of bounced around. Maybe just the elevation on the track, I'm not sure. But in the chat, we do have a poll that is live, and what are we asking you? We're asking you, how many cautions do you think there's going to be tonight? Now, for the viewers at home, if you're just tuning in, we've already had 2 cautions for cause. My vote was on 3. That's what I voted for, but of course, you can go all the way up to 4+. So let us know what you think. I think 3 is a good number, Jordan. What about you?
Man, I was thinking 3 would probably be the money, but now that we got the 70 having to fight his way back up through the field, I think the 4+ might be the number we're going for. I don't necessarily think the 70 is going to cause all the problems up through, but he's definitely going to put some pressure on some of these guys that he's trying to pass. Mistakes may be made as we come into the closing laps here.
Mistakes may be made, indeed. I think you put it pretty well when you mentioned pressure. You see somebody as fast as that number 70 closing in at such an incredible closing rate. Sometimes you make a little bit of a bobble. You're looking in your mirror more than you're looking in front. Sort of like Kevin Harvick in real life at the Roval. You know, you're looking in your mirror, you're not looking ahead, and then boom, there's the heartburn turn wall. Of course, that doesn't exist here at North Wilkesboro, but there's plenty of walls for these guys to find. So they're going to have to watch their mirror, but they're also going to have to make sure they don't make any mistakes, don't crack under pressure. As the number 70 goes almost 3 wide for a moment, he's going to get to the bottom of Woody Mahan. Will Warstler able to use this battle to his advantage and give himself a little bit of a gap. Now that the 70 is clear, he's going to try to run Warstler back down. And man, it has not taken Eckrich long at all, Jordan. We've only been green for about 9 laps now. And already, whoa, contact, the 84. I didn't even catch that at first, but 84 put the bumper to the 70, and it didn't get the 70 loose, it got the 84 loose. It's like the rear end snapped around as soon as he got the bumper to him.
Yeah, I think that was a product of the 84, realizing he overshot the corner just a little bit too much, got as much brake in that car as he could. And when the contact was made, it just unloaded the rear tires and almost spun him right around. Great catch by the 84, Woody Mahan. As we see the 70 of Scott Eckridge now going to work on the 29 of Will Warstler.
Yeah, he's going to try to make this pass, but it's not just Warstler involved in this battle. You've got Johnny Avila ahead of both of these guys, so it's going to be a three-car battle, and that always makes the dynamic that much more complicated because you're not just watching one guy. You're not trying to get around one guy. You're trying to watch both drivers, what lines they're running, and if you're going to make the pass, you almost have to make the move on both of them at once when they're that close together. Brady goes right on the bottom, 3 wide for 5th, contact with the number 29, and the 70 gets clear. A lot of aggression out of that 70. He was able to make that pass, although not the cleanest move in the world. It's easy to get a little bit overzealous in the corner. You want to make that pass, you want to get down to the bottom of the track, and you're just kind of hoping that it sticks, and in that situation for the 70, it didn't quite stick. I don't think either driver sustained substantial damage from that by any means. I think both of those cars are fine. They'll be able to continue, no harm, no foul. But now Avila going to work his way around the back car of Fletcher in that 43, as well as the 70. So the battle continues between these two. And Eckridge right now, he's worked his way all the way up to 4th. This battle is for the podium position, but all of this battle, all of this side-by-side with other cars has cost him some time to the leader. He's about 3 seconds back, which doesn't sound like much, but at a short track where the lap times are so short, 3 seconds actually translates to quite a bit of real estate on the track. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can make that gap up. He goes down low to the bottom of the 63, but Jordan, we've seen this time and time again. If you're going to pass the number 70 on the low line, you're going to have a really good car to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you see, the 70 is doing everything he can to try to get the momentum off at turn number 2 and just can't do it. The 63 being up there really takes that line away from the guys on the bottom to be able to do it. And he's going to have to take a really good run. As we see right here, the 70 using every inch of track he possibly can, trying to stay to the inside of the 63 as they get down to turns 3 and 4. This is where the pass is going to have to happen. You're going to have to utilize as much racetrack as physically possible going into turns 3 and 4 to make that pass, or try to clear him right here in the center of turns 1 and 2. You see the 70 car move up and just a little bit of contact with the 63. That's short track racing. That's what you're going to see. And the 63 hooks the 70 car.
Well, you know, I can't say I didn't see that one coming, Jordan. That number 70 was getting pretty aggressive with a lot of these guys, working his way through the field, and he has every right to. He's a playoff driver. He's in contention for the championship. But he made a little bit of contact with the 63, made a little bit of contact with Warstler before that, which, mind you, an alliance with the number 63, I believe. So definitely ruffling the feathers of Will Warstler Racing. And, contact with the 11 going into pit road as he speeds to the stall. I think there's some anger behind the wheel of that number 70, Jordan.
Yeah, there definitely is some anger behind the wheel of that number 70 car. Frustrated after obviously having to get sent to the rear from contact with the 14 and then more contact later on in this run with the 63 as you just saw. And then the caution comes out as the 63 made contact with the 70 going into turn 3 and then just pure frustration showing off here at this point in time. It looks like the 63 of Johnny Avila for that move has been disqualified from the event, so race control obviously feeling that was quite obvious of a move by the 63 car. So he has been disqualified from the event. I would imagine the 70, obviously we saw him go full throttle in the turn 1 wall, so I imagine he's done as well at this point. So very, very unfortunate, but like we mentioned, the temper starting to fly here towards the end of this event.
Short track and even shorter tempers. It really wasn't much that kicked that all off. That's kind of what surprises me. Like I said, the 70 was getting a little bit aggressive. He did make a little bit of contact with the 63 in the corner prior to that. But, I mean, you can't really dump a guy because he nudged you. All right, the 70 got into the door, and he gave him a little bit of a nudge to try to make that pass. Looks like Will Warstler was involved in that as well, as he slides down to the inside on the replay there. But I gotta say, if I'm allowed to be a little opinionated, I think the 63 may have been out of line with that. But I definitely think the 70 might have also been out of line there with that move. I mean, coming down into the pits, makes contact with another championship contender and gives him damage, and the 11 had nothing to do with that. That's what gets me. I mean, Tyler Seville, he didn't do anything. He was just coming down pit road, and then boom, left side damage. So again, short tempers, hard to analyze all that went into that, and even harder to kind of pin blame. I feel like that was just drivers getting heated, and just push came to shove.
Push definitely came to shove, but now that we're re-racking the field, getting ready to go 1 to green, look who's up front. Adam Jersky and Michael Chrobok. After all that, that's your 2 drivers that are going to restart this race first and second. So big shakeup up front, obviously, as both the drivers are running up front now either had to pit for damage or pit for tires. So this could be interesting here with about 40 laps to go.
Oh, it'll be interesting for sure. And those who pitted this time for this caution, they're pretty much good to the end, barring another caution in terms of tire wear. I mean, we've got about 40 laps to the end of this thing, which is a little bit less than these guys wanted to go on tires anyhow. So green flag flies. Adam Jersky in that number 69 is going to lead the way, diving down to the bottom. Trying to see what he can do as he gets down to the low line, pulls a bit of a crossover maneuver. Woody Mahan goes side by side behind them as they battle for the lead. And looks like Greg Evans is going to have no troubles at all claiming that top spot. The battling continuing behind them. Mahan currently holding on to that 3rd position there on the podium, but not without pressure. He does have the number 27 and the number 72 teammates behind him, trying to claim that position and take it away from him. Gonna have to do everything they can, as it looks like Drew Carroll in that 27 is going to go to the high line. On your screen right there, that is the number 11. We're going to have to see how these Will Warstler driving machines are going to be able to kind of navigate this track, what kind of pace they have, because the 11 has damage from that pit road incident. The number 29 may have damage from the initial incident. And damage, luckily at a short track, doesn't necessarily slow you down too much in terms of top speed. The aero damage isn't going to slow you down that way. But if you got any engine damage, or if you got some aero damage that affects your handling in the corners, that could be detrimental.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And I think you're starting to see it just a little bit for the 11 car right now. That doesn't look like the 11 car we saw early on in the event. So definitely not helping his case any, as he's running down side by side with his boss in the 29 car. Just unfortunate turn events all over. I mean, that's not what you want to see. Obviously, short track tempers will flare here and there, but you don't want to see 2 drivers like that are going to take out more than just themselves when they have an issue like that.
Yeah, it seemed like that situation just kind of blew up into something a lot bigger than it needed to be. I feel like that was kind of an isolated incident between the 63 and the number 70, and then things just kind of blew up. And of course, these other drivers, they're just kind of bystanders. Where are they going to go? So it's unfortunate, but definitely a dramatic way to start the round of 4. I mean, you got to expect when it comes down this close to the championship, especially at a short track, sometimes these crazy moments happen. And at a track like this, even if you didn't do anything wrong, even if you're a bystander like Will Warstler, like the number 11, things don't always go the way you planned. So it's kind of a lottery at times. Some drivers win, some drivers lose, and not a whole lot you can do to change it. But it's definitely been entertaining. We'll definitely say that. Seville is holding on to 4th, so a lot of pace still in that machine. I mean, to be holding on to 4th, you got to think that car is at least halfway decent, which is good for him. Drew Carroll holding on to 3rd. Woody Mahan moved his way up into 2nd, and he is about 1 second behind Greg Evans. So Greg Evans, I feel like all night he's had the 2nd best car. It seemed like in terms of pace, his car was just a tick behind the number 70. Now the number 70 isn't a factor. He's not in this race. So the number 2, with a lot less competition behind him, you got to think he's breathing a breath of relief here, a sigh of relief, but he's got to stay on his game. He is going to be getting into lap traffic before this race is over. He does have cars behind him with a lot of pace, so he's not out of the woods yet.
No, he's definitely not out of the woods yet. Like you said, definitely was able to sigh a big sigh of relief there, just kind of knowing that the 70 car is out of the event at this point in time. He doesn't have to worry about the 70 getting back up to his bumper. The 11, with the damage he had, probably not going to be pressing too hard on his bumper as well. And the 72 of Michael Chrobok is the other championship contender who restarted 2nd in this run, falling back on old tires. I think the 72 and the 69 were really hoping for another quick caution, be able to maybe drag everyone down pit road and have another set of tires on top of them, but it didn't work out too well for them. But definitely just able to kind of put the thing on cruise control right now. Keep an eye on Woody Mahan, your back bumper. Don't let him get too close, and just hope for the best for the rest of the race.
Speaking of Mahan, Woody gained about a 10th over the last couple laps. He's actually keeping pace with the number 2, occasionally actually lapping a little bit quicker than him. That 84 might have some life in it. There's the lap time differentials, bottom of the screen. You can see Mahan got 200ths there, 900ths there, a 10th there. Looks like Evans had the advantage for one lap there on 134. Last time around, the advantage just barely going to Mahan again. And again, these are tiny little increases, hundredths of a second that he's gaining per lap, but he's gaining. It shows that that car has a lot of speed. We haven't seen the 84 free to run. I mean, he's been side by side battling with the competition all night long, and now there's only one car in front of him. There's nobody trying to battle too hard right now. So finally, for the first time, I think we're finally seeing that 84 in its true form, and he's doing a heck of a job out there.
That he is, and you mentioned he's slowly, ever so slowly, picking away at that lead that 2 car has. And if you think back to last week, I know you weren't here with us last week, Andre, but this is kind of the same position that Woody was in last week, just riding P2 most of the second run at Talladega, and then finally with a couple laps to go, he made his move and was able to get out front. So wonder if he's kind of having flashbacks to that. Obviously not drafting here at North Wilkes-Barre. It's a much smaller track, but running P2 with the closing laps to Greg Evans, and I wonder if he's just hoping, hey, maybe I can make it 2 for 2 here at the end of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you're within a second of the leader, you've got a shot. You got to think lap traffic will play a part in this within the next 20 laps before we get to the end. That could change the dynamic a little bit, and if he saves his tires just a little bit better, keeps the tread on those things just a little bit fresher. Of course, there is no tread, they're slicks, but proverbial tread, then he'll be all right. He might have a shot at this thing towards the end. And Drew Carroll, too, he's actually slowly closing in on Mahan behind them there. So these lap times very, very close between, I would say, the top 3. Even Tyler Seville back there, not far off the pace, if he's off at all. I mean, he's actually keeping with the number 27, staying on the bumper, staying in tow. So, man, this really is anybody's game, as for the first time in a while, Woody Mahan actually just briefly had the gap down to under a second, then it went right back up to 1.04. But it just shows Mahan inching ever so closer, but he's going to have to pick up the pace if he wants to get there before the end of it. 19 laps goes by fast at a track like this, and those hundredths of a second that he's gaining, or thousandths of a second, may not be enough.
No, they might not be, and all it's going to take, though, was one slip up from the 2 car, which is very rare to see or even think about. The 2 is almost always spot on. Very smooth, just very technical when it comes to any track we go to. So to think that the 2 could have an issue is a little bit of a stretch, but hey, it's real life. Anything can happen, and anything will happen, as we've seen here tonight.
Yeah, anything can and will happen. I think that might as well be the slogan for the Championship 4, because I feel like you could have made a lot of predictions going into tonight, but no matter how many predictions you made, I don't think any of them included what actually happened. Because, man, very dramatic, very unexpected night for a few of these playoff or championship contenders. So, very interesting indeed. Michael Chrobok still hanging on to 9th position. He started the race in 9th, hasn't quite gotten out of there quite yet, but he's holding on to his position. Adam Jersky 8th, Tim Knott with an impressive 7th place run so far tonight, and that number 41. I know we got a couple Tim Knott fans in chat, so if you're rooting for that 41, tonight's a pretty good night. Firmly inside the top 10, not far behind Troy Haight ahead of him. May have time enough to just pick up one more position. If he just picks up the pace a little bit, we'll have to see. But overall, a good night. Brian Yaczik in 5th. Tyler Seville with the slight amount of damage. He's running 4th, right behind Drew Carroll. But that number 11, I got to wonder how much that damage is affecting him. I'm not sure he had the fastest car tonight, but I definitely feel like he had a faster car than 4th, before that incident. So, kind of unfortunate. I feel like that might be holding him back a little bit, Jordan.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. He definitely had a little bit faster car than P4. He was running 2nd and 3rd mostly, and with a little bit better of a pace. And I've just kind of been watching that car the last few laps. It just doesn't look like it was handling the same as what it was before. So obviously the contact that was made must have bent something just right, knocked the handling of that car off just a little bit. And if you're Tyler Seville, obviously you're running P4 right now. You started on the pole out of everything that's happened, you're still P2 to the championship competitors. Take it with a grain of salt at this point. I mean, obviously you're frustrated. You're not going to finish a couple positions better where you probably should have, but P4 is still very respectable, and it's a great rebound from what happened.
Oh yeah, he's definitely had a better night than a few drivers out there. He's had better luck. Seems like fortune has kind of smiled upon him a little bit more, even if his race hasn't been flawless. You know, very rarely is anybody's race flawless, and very rarely is a season flawless. A lot of championships have been built on flawed seasons. Look at Tony Stewart's last championship. I mean, that was one of the most inconsistent championship seasons in the history of stock car racing, but it just goes to show that in this kind of sport, with this form of racing, anything can happen, and Tyler Seville holding on to 4th place, he's doing what he needs to do. You know, only a few positions behind Greg Evans, and with a couple races coming up, he's going to have time to try to make those points up. He's not in a hole that's too big to get out of. So definitely doing a good job hanging on. But 8 laps to go. Woody Mahan has dropped back to 1.1 seconds. I think Mahan may have been making a push for it. I noticed he got it down to 9/10, and it stayed there for a while. So he was definitely pushing that car, trying to catch up to the leader. And then he dropped all the way back down to 1.2 at one point. So maybe pushed the car a little bit too hard, used his equipment up, trying to make a late race charge. But who knows? 7 laps to go. 1 second is the difference. Not an insurmountable gap. We'll have to wait and find out how that goes for him. Drew Carroll behind in 3rd there. These drivers getting a little bit of separation, a lot of clear track in front of the leader. Only a handful of lap cars kind of strung out ahead of him. No giant packs of lap cars. So this is exactly the kind of night that Greg Evans wanted to have. Anytime you're in this situation where you're in it for the championship and you come to a race that is going to be such a wild card as Wilkesboro can be, you want a consistent race. And that's what Evans has had. He's kept his nose clear, wasn't involved in any of the incidents really. He's been running up front all night, and now with only a handful of laps to go, there's very little traffic ahead of him. He's got a decent gap to the car behind. All he's got to do is bring it home. So definitely, as far as having a good night or a flawless night, I think Evans is about as close to it as you could get so far. We're gonna knock on wood. I don't want to give him the commentator's curse, because actually Woody Mahan did close in 2/10 for a lap there and then dropped back about a 1/10. So he's actually closing a little bit, but with only 3 laps to go, I'm not sure he's going to have time.
No, definitely going to run out of time. Even with that second gap, I don't think he's going to be able to catch up unless this lap car really messes up the 2 of Greg Evans, which doesn't look like it's going to happen, as they're going to come off the corner. We get 2 laps to go, and like you mentioned, absolutely flawless out of the 2 car tonight. Let the 70 car go when he should have. Just kind of rode and saved his stuff, and when the time was right, he's now been able to take off. Cards fell in Greg Evans' hands. I mean, this is you can't ask for anything more.
Yeah, definitely showed the value of patience. We saw a few impatient drivers tonight, and it ended their nights. But you got Greg Evans taking the white flag. He has been kind of the embodiment of patience. Like you said, he let the 70 go when he had to. He's never been that aggressive on the overtakes or on the defense. He's just been running his laps, trying to get as good of a run as he can get. And, well, he's going to bring home the win here at North Wilkesboro. Greg Evans takes the checkered with Woody Mahan in tow in 2nd, Drew Carroll 3rd, Tyler Seville 4th. And what a wild race this was, Jordan. I feel like we're going to have a little bit to talk about in post-race as we let these guys get their cars wound up. We got Will Warstler drifting around the track. Is that Eurobeat that I hear? I mean, he really drifted that corner. He was like Takumi Fujiwara out there. That was awesome. Oh man, but we are just waiting for some of these drivers to get in the waiting room, and in the meantime, we'll go over our official finishing order as the number 2 burns it to the ground there at the stripe for the fans in those wooden bleachers. Looks like our final order for tonight. I'll go ahead and take 1 through 10. Greg Evans going to take home the win. Woody Mahan with an impressive 2nd place. Drew Carroll quietly sneaks up to 3rd and stays there. Tyler Seville salvages 4th out of a damaged race car. Brian Yaczik finishes 5th. Troy Haight P6. Tim Knott P7. Adam Jersky gets up to P8. Michael Chrobok finishes where he starts, P9. And Mark Myers didn't even post a qualifying time. He's going to round out your top 10.
11th is going to be the 29, the birthday boy, Will Warstler. AJ Digley will finish 12th. John Eckert, 13th. Kevin Stone will finish 14th. Richard Fletcher 15th. Scott Eckrich and Johnny Avila both finished 16th and 17th. I'll be obviously both out of the event. The 63 obviously was DQ'd from the contact as well. So that is your running order for the 89 Speed Shop. Choppin and Droppin 160.
And with that, we're going to get into some post-race interviews. First up is going to be third place Drew Carroll. Let's bring him up, see what he's got to say. Drew Carroll, you got a copy?
Yeah.
Well, Drew, it was a very chaotic night out there. I think a lot of things happened that nobody really planned for. None of the drivers probably had the night they were expecting to have, but through it all, you had a very quietly consistent night. You snuck up to third, you stayed out of any trouble, and at the end of it, you brought home a podium. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it was a lot more of an eventful day than I would have liked, just because, we messed up in qualifying and had to start in the back, and I really wish we had track position, because I feel like we could have been one of those guys that was going to be up there fighting for the win. But yeah, I mean, we got into a little bit with the 28 there at the start of the race. I just want to apologize to him. That was 100% my fault for that caution there. But then all in all, we were just kind of trying to ride and kind of save some tire, but just try to pick guys off one at a time. Super hard to pass, though. Really, really hard to pass if you got side-by-side. I ran probably, it felt like 100 laps side-by-side with the 69 car. So it was a good night for us. I mean, if you would have told me to start this, I'd finish third. I would have been like, you crazy, because it's, North Wilkesboro and it's tight quarters. But I felt like we had a really solid day. Proud of everybody. Just stings a little bit, because I just wish we had a little bit more track position throughout the race.
And again, it was a phenomenal performance, and definitely impressive to see just how you worked your way through all the incidents. Like you said, more eventful than you probably would have hoped, but anytime a race is more eventful than you like and you still bring home a podium, that's a good night. So anybody you'd like to shout out or thank for your performance there, Drew?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Thumbs Up Cancer Down for their support throughout the year, and this ending of the year. We've had a great run with them so far. Glad to be back on the podium, so thank you guys for running the show up here in the booth. Thank Brian and Mike at Loud Pedal Motorsports, and it was a good day. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, you have a good night, Drew.
You too now.
All right, third place Drew Carroll out of the booth, and Jordan Harnish is alongside Woody Mahan. Let's hear about this second place run.
Woody Mahan, you got a copy, sir?
I'm here, brother.
All right, man. 2 weeks in a row we get to talk to you. I mentioned last week we were hoping we get to see you, and here you are, second place. Walk us through your night, man.
Man, me and the 63 were about even, and I couldn't get by him, so I was kind of set up to find a top five somehow. And then they all got together, but I was just trying to stay behind the 63, and if something happened, a mistake happened, then I could, get inside the top five.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned you and that 63 car are battling for the first half of the race, side by side almost the entire time. What did you think about the groove he was running versus the groove that you were trying to run?
I think his groove made it a real pain to try to get by him. That's what, I could never get the run off of 2 to kind of bomb him into 3. So I was kind of just sold on letting him get by and then tucking in and trying to hope he makes a mistake.
Yeah, and obviously the mistakes were made throughout the night, unfortunately. But fortunately for you, a second place finish. You're closing out the season impressively well compared to the start of the season for you. Is there anyone you need to thank for your run here?
So a little practice beforehand, and Scott kind of walked me through a lap. Last year I literally got lapped on poor pace here, and that's something that I try my best not to get lapped on pace. And he told me a couple things about a line and crank a whole bunch of rear brake into it, and we found some speed. But thanks to the guys at LPM and especially Drew not running me over right there at the end. It was pretty close. All those guys are awesome, and all the guys at Mahan Speed Laboratories putting the work in that they do.
Well, absolutely impressive run again for you tonight. Congratulations on your second place finish. We'll see you next week at Rockingham.
See you guys.
Woody Mahan out of the booth. Another phenomenal drive from that 84, finishing out the season really strong. It's good to see. We're going to have a word now with our race winner, Greg Evans. You got a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, Greg, what an amazing performance out there, and what an incredible way to start the round of 4 here for the Sim Racers Club. You played it smart all night long. To me, that's what it looked like. You were just making the smart decisions out there, picking and choosing your battles, and at the end of the night, it worked out. You brought home the trophy. Tell me about it.
Yeah, man, we had a good car. We knew we was going to be better in the race than we did in qualifying, and I've had some rough luck qualifying this year. So to qualify third was kind of a nice change up. But yeah, we got to the lead there early on. Just trying to run our own pace. Scott got underneath me, and I knew that he was probably a lot quicker than me on the short run, so I just kind of let him go and fell in the line. And yeah, just tried to have a smooth race tonight. We were kind of going to settle for second there because I think the 70 had the best car by far, but I honestly don't know the whole aspect of what happened, but it sounds like it was ugly on anyway. So hopefully the league can do something to kind of clean that up a little bit. And it was, like I said, it was a good race for us. Good to finally get back up here and win a race finally. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's absolutely been a phenomenal night for you. And with the misfortune that some of the other Championship 4 drivers have kind of had tonight, that gives you a little bit of a points buffer going into these last few races. What's the mindset here? What's the tactic going forward to try to get the result that you want?
I'm just going to do what we did last year, man. Just do race by race, go for the checker. Try to race everybody clean and show respect. But when it comes down to it, if you go out there and win the first 3 races, or finish in the top 2, it makes it awful hard to catch you.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to seeing what you can do going forward and to cap out the season. Is there anybody that you would like to shout out or thank for your performance?
Yes, sir. Definitely got to thank Maverick Concepts, Hacksaw PC for the awesome PC, Sam Maxwell Customs for the wheel from last year, iRacing, iFlag, my guys from Steel Horse Racing. I got to thank Sam Crow, man. He put the race on for 89 Speed Shop tonight. So check those guys out. Sam's a great guy, and he's my pastor, so definitely check those guys out. And just glad to pull off the win and the race that he sponsored. So, and thank you guys again for broadcasting it, because, like I say every time, these races being broadcast just puts a whole other aspect into them. Wish we had a better car count, but hopefully next year we can kind of figure that out. And this is a great league to race in, and like I said, broadcasting just makes it extra special.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg, and we're going to let you go celebrate with the team. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
You too. Greg Evans out of the booth, finally getting back on top. Like he said, it's been a while, but he did get the win. Before we end out the broadcast, Jordan, I got to ask you, and this is kind of a loaded question considering everything that happened, but what are some post-race thoughts?
Man, it sounds like me and Sam might have a lot to go over after this one. Definitely not what we expected heading into it, but it is a short track. Short track tempers did flare tonight, and we got a big shakeup heading into next week, going into Rockingham.
I do not envy you or any of the other admins that have to sort anything out after tonight. So good luck with that. I do wish you the best of luck. And man, all I can say is I'm looking forward to the coming races, because this was a fun one to watch. Even, barring the chaos and barring the kind of crazy stuff that happened, just the on-track racing was incredible. I've been out of the booth for a couple weeks, but it was great to be back. And I want to thank you guys again for having me on. But to the viewers at home, that is just about going to do it for our coverage of the 89 Speed Shop Choppin' and Droppin' 160 for the Sim Racers Club. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.